Hello and welcome to another episode of The Framework of Tomorrow. I'm your host, Keegan Goldfarb, and today we are going to be talking about Independence Day and what it is all about and kind of the history behind that as well. But before we get into this amazing, fantastic episode, I'm going to be talking about my sponsor here on the podcast, the Minnesota Nurse. Have you heard of her? If you've been listening, you sure have. If you are pursuing a higher education or want insight on life as a nurse, go check out Ashley Luann K at the Minnesota Nurse on Instagram. Not only does that help me out, it also helps the network I am in, Rally Network. You can check us out at rallynetwork.net, and it helps her out as well. So it helps both of us. You should go and do it. It would be fantastic. So over this weekend on Saturday, it was July 4th. So today I'm going to be talking about Independence Day, July 4th, same day, and what it is all about. I'm going to just be covering it as a whole. So on Saturday was the 244th 4th of July. That's a lot of fours. 244th 4th of July. Let that sink in for a second. 244 years ago was when America gained their independence. In contrast to like the grander scheme of history, that isn't that long ago. 244 years was not that long ago. If you think about it, it's almost like it would be less than 5 lifetimes of my dad, which is crazy because that's insane that it was that 5 to 7 generations ago was America, like gaining their independence of human beings, which is absolutely insane. I wouldn't say, I don't know if 5, they would have to have a kid when they were like 50 for 5 generations, and then that would be true, but that's normally not true. So it's probably more like, it could be true for some families. I don't know, 5 to 8-ish. It's probably more in the 8s, but yeah. Either way, that's still a crazy amount on how close, like relatively, how fast America has grown in 244 years since we gained our independence. It's crazy how much the world has grown, to be honest, but especially America. It's crazy that that we can be a example to other countries as well, and we have been throughout the years on how our independence was gained, and also how our government has functioned, and how we've been an example to other countries of that as well. I wouldn't say today. I would just say more of just like the values our country is based off of, and kind of how our constitution and stuff works that way. I'm not saying like we're people look at our government now and they're like, wow, they're such a great government. In fact, it's the opposite. A lot of people think our government's a joke, which it kind of is. I'm not going to lie, it kind of is. But what we're built off of is the Constitution and stuff like that, is how no other form of government has, I guess, lasted as long as we have without changing values, hasn't lasted as long as we have. It's kind of crazy. And been the most successful, especially the most successful, a new form of government that has been successful throughout the years. So that's pretty cool. And the 4th of July was actually, it wasn't deemed a holiday immediately. It took until 1941 until it was deemed a national holiday, but it first started in 1977, which we gained our independence in 1976. So a year later is when the first one was held. So why did it start? Why did Independence Day, why did 4th of July start? It began as a celebration of the independence of America in 1776. I hope I didn't say that like 2 seconds ago. I'm pretty sure I said 1776 and not 1976. I really hope I didn't say that, because somebody's just going to cut that out of the audio and be like, oh, look what Keegan Goldfarb, the host of Framework of Tomorrow history podcast, he can't even say that right. Anyway, 1776 is when it started. Is when we gained our independence. It started in 1777. Why did it start? The Declaration of Independence was drafted July 2nd, 1776, and was approved by Congress July 4th, 1776, and was signed August 2nd, 1776, which is crazy because if you think about it, they drafted the thing on July 2nd and then was approved by Congress 2 days later. You don't see that in America today. It was crazy how 13 colonies, even 13, could agree on something in 2 days. I mean, today it takes years for people to even agree on something in Congress, and it's a whole big mess. But it's cool that, I guess that really isn't that controversial of a thing to gain your independence, so I'm sure that's why it was so fast. But yeah, so why did it start? We gained independence from Great Britain. So I'm sure you know that, but you're like, why did we gain independence from Great Britain? So Great Britain wasn't exactly being the nicest to us. We had, obviously, European colonists came over from Europe, and Great Britain actually started taxing a lot of what we were doing over here and governing a lot of what we were doing, because obviously we came over from there. But then after a while, we had different generations who were only grown and brought up in America, and they're like, okay, why are these guys on the other side of the ocean dictating what we're doing over here, and why are they taxing our stuff? Because they're kind of separate from us. They have different values. They have a whole different form of government. What is going on? Why are they doing this? And Great Britain was taxing, and Americans were kind of like, okay. It was actually a very small minority of Americans that didn't like Britain, and it turned into a lot of people not liking Britain. But it started off with a little bit, and that's kind of what happened. And really cool fact about July 4th and how we gained our independence. In the Revolutionary War, if you did not know, where there was multiple different kinds of ethnicities who actually fought in the Revolutionary War. There was obviously the European colonists. There was some French that fought. Lafayette was the left-hand man to George Washington. Lafayette, a French man. I can't remember his first name. Is it Jean Lafayette? I think I'm saying that right. Anyway, he was a French man. He fought in it. And, well, French helped us out in the Revolutionary War as well. This is, I'll probably have a more detailed episode about the Revolutionary War specifically, and we also had some African Americans who were fighting in the war as well, which is really, really cool that could happen. Anyway, Great Britain, they're taxing us. I'm sure you know all about that. The Boston Tea Party, we threw all their tea in the thing, in the Boston Harbor because we were outraged because they were taxing our tea. How dare they? That's why we drink coffee now. I'm just kidding. So yeah, that's who we gained independence from, and that's why this holiday started, because we fought Great Britain when no one else did during this time period, because Great Britain pretty much owned the world. They didn't own the whole world, but they owned a lot of things, and so it was kind of a big thing that we gained independence from them and fought against them. So what did the early celebrations of July 4th look like? They actually, surprising enough, and I didn't think they would, but they look very similar to how they do now. They had bonfires back then. They had feasts shooting off muskets. They had a ceremonial... shooting off muskets isn't true. We don't really have that anymore. I wish we did. Maybe we do somewhere over America. I wish we had more of that. That'd be cool. And this other thing I think is really important, and I think we should do as well, a ceremonial reading of the Declaration of Independence. They would do that for the early years. They didn't really do it too much later after that, but I think we still should, because that's pretty important and kind of a cool thing to hear about. John Adams was actually the one that set these standards. He was like, we should have guns going off, we should have bonfires, parades, like concerts and stuff like that. Well, concerts back then would be like I don't know, like very official stuff, but they would have just parties upon parties, everyone go crazy, everyone have a fun time. However, John Adams was also boycotted July 4th because he believed it should have been celebrated on July 2nd when the Declaration of Independence was drafted. So he's like, why wouldn't it be on July 2nd when we gained our independence officially? Well, I guess it wasn't really officially, but we gained our independence and we wrote this thing. So he was like, come on, because that's when the Declaration was originally written. However, it was only approved July 4th and then signed August 2nd in 1776. So John Adams was kind of like, he actually got, it's funny because he got invitations to parties on July 4th and he boycotted them. He's like, no, I'm not coming. I celebrate on July 2nd. John Adams was an interesting guy. But that's definitely part of John Adams' character. He's definitely the guy that would do that. One of the other questions, I'm sure you're thinking, and I was thinking as well, I'm like, why do we shoot fireworks off? Where did that start? So fireworks, I didn't actually know fireworks were this old. They can be traced back all the way until 200 BC. That's a long time ago. And the tradition of setting, I mean, I'm sure the ones that were in 1777 were a little different than the original ones. But the tradition of setting them off on July 4th began in Philadelphia in 1777 during the first ever official July 4th celebration. They set off 13 of them in honor of the first 13 colonies, which is really, really cool. That's cool. We should do, I mean, they only set off 13 that day because I'm sure it was a lot to make them and make them really cool. And yeah. But now we can make as many as we want, and that's why we do thousands upon thousands. And apparently, I actually heard the other day, this is kind of a little off topic, but apparently this July 4th has been the most fireworks ever bought and set off. And apparently, I know I keep saying apparently, I become hyper aware of what I'm saying. But this year, there has been the most complaints actually of fireworks, which is interesting. That's kind of interesting. But I mean, I guess that makes sense. More fireworks, so more complaints. Makes sense. So 4th of July through the years, the tradition of the patriotic celebration became more of a widespread after the War of 1812, in which the United States faced Great Britain again. If you don't know about 1812, you should go look it up because no one knows about it, and it's an interesting war. It didn't last that long, but you should go go and look it up. Maybe I'll talk about it one day. I'll talk about some random skewed wars that people have gotten into, and 1812 is part of that. In 1870, the U.S. Congress made July 4th a federal holiday, and then finally in 1941, the provision was expanded to grant a paid holiday to all federal employees. So 1941, you're sitting in your office job. It's July 3rd. You're like, whoa, why don't we have time off for the independence of America? And then your boss is like, oh my gosh, that makes so much sense. It goes all the way to Congress and boom, it's passed. I'm just kidding. That's not how it works. I wish that's how it works because that'd be kind of cool. I mean, I don't know. Maybe not that cool because then people could pass some crazy stuff. But basically, that's kind of how it worked. And that's why we have paid holidays to all federal employees. So if you work for the federal government, you have paid holiday today. Or yeah, I guess today. I'm recording on July 4th, just so you know. So I'm kind of going nuts. And through the years, it is said the importance of the holiday actually began to decline, but is still very much held to be an important holiday nonetheless. I can't really argue that because I don't know how I wasn't there for some of the early celebrations of July 4th. So maybe it was. It could have been. I'm sure it was way more like of a big deal. I mean, it's still a big deal today, but I'm sure it was like, no one's doing anything today other than just going nuts and celebrating July 4th. So yeah, that's kind of all I have for today with the July 4th. One thing I do want to talk about, I actually haven't seen any of this today, which I'm kind of glad because I think that's, yeah, I'll explain. So I heard about this last week. There was a group of people who wanted to boycott the July 4th, Independence Day, because they believed that it was a racist holiday, and because not everyone was free during that time, it wasn't a good thing, so that everyone should boycott it and wear all black instead of celebrating our holiday. And here's kind of my 2 cents on this. It's tough, but I do believe that the importance of the Independence Day and that war that was fought and a bunch of people that died, it should still be celebrated. And I know Frederick Douglass, he was an African American, a very, very cool African American in the early days of America. You should look him up, Frederick Douglass. People were using arguments from him that he said that 4th of July is, I guess he wasn't, I don't really know how to explain this. He wasn't necessarily in favor of celebrating it until all Americans were free, but he said there is still an importance of it. So people kind of took that first part of it and was like, look what he said. He hated 4th of July. No, he didn't. He didn't hate 4th of July. And so did Martin Luther King. Also made a comment of this when he was alive on everyone should be able to celebrate the freedom of America as long as everyone is free, which everyone is free now. Some people don't agree with that, but I mean, I don't know. I'm not going to get into that, but basically that's kind of my 2 cents on that. And I think it's very cool. I haven't seen anything on that anymore. I think a lot of people, it was a really, really, I think it was for like a day people were saying that. I think it got shut down pretty fast. People were like, really? Like, the independence of America is a super important holiday, and it's not saying that like we're being racist or anything like that, because that's not what it's about. It's about the freedom of America, what those people fought for back in the day. And America would be a very different place now had they have not done the Revolutionary War. Very different place. And who knows what would have happened there, because Great Britain was also involved in the slave trade as well as America. And they made some different colonies in Southern America. So Southern Africa. And there's some really interesting books on that. I've read a couple. But yeah, I'm just saying, it would be a very different world now. And I think it's very cool that we gained our independence back in 1776. And I thank all the people that fought in that, including African Americans who fought for that freedom. So, yeah. Anyway, that's my whole shabash. I'm sure you didn't really care about my opinion on that one. But, yes. Thank you for listening. Random history fact today. Americans will enjoy 150 million hot dogs during July 4th. 150 million hot dogs during the 4th. That's a lot of hot dogs. I wonder how many burgers is. I wonder actually how many fireworks. You should look that up. You should right now press pause, go look it up, and then let me know. Check me out on Instagram at the Framework Tomorrow. DM me and be like, look, this is how many fireworks Americans on average set off on July 4th. Or buy. That'd be even a bigger number, I'm sure. Send me thoughts and questions, like I said, at the Framework of Tomorrow on Instagram, or the Framework of Tomorrow at gmail.com. Make sure to rate me 5 stars on iTunes, or 1 star if you hated it. Either way, go rate me on iTunes, because that helps me out. That would be amazing, and I will show you at the beginning of my episode if I see it. And I upload every Monday and Wednesday at 5 a.m. Make sure to have a fantastic rest of your day and week, and make sure to tune in on Wednesday for another fantastic episode of The Framework of Tomorrow.